welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer! Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things.
All right, welcome back to Boring Reviews. Nick here.
Jodi there.
And we are excited for another...
Geography Now.
Yeah. And this comes as way of Patreon requests and a few other requests, I'm not going to lie. We did the St. Kitts and Nevis Geography Now video. We reacted to it, and now we're going to react to...
Trinidad and Tobago.
I swear like a hair by my nose or whatever. And with this, it's kind of coincidental because just on Friday, a few days ago, I had a student who they're going out to recess, and there was Snack Shack. They can spend their money or whatever, get a snack. And he's like, I have this old money, Mr. Peterson. You think it's going to work? And I look at it, and it's money from Trinidad and Tobago.
No.
I'm not even lying. And I'm like, they're not going to accept this money. And he's like, oh, my stepdad gave me the wrong dollars. And I was like, first second, he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, I'm sure. This is real money, but not from this country, and they won't accept it at the school snack shack. But anyways, we have quite a few viewers, actually, that we've got to know through Cricket and whatnot that are either from the Caribbean or from this these sets of islands specifically. So excited to check this out. If you're excited for our reaction anyway, please don't forget to
like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be aware of our next uploaded videos. It's going to make me want to go on vacation, huh?
If you're from Trinidad and Tobago, let us know. Also, quick connection. I'm a big Mighty Ducks fan, and in the second one, when they're in the Junior Olympics, it's the first game they play is Trinidad and Tobago, and they beat them pretty badly. Here we go.
Hey guys, before we get into this episode, we're doing something a little different. Caleb actually has a studio, and this is what it looks like. It's got this really cool vintage aesthetic, and if you are interested in finding this place, you can find it at vintagestudio.la on Instagram, and you can book it out on PeerSpace, link in the description below. So we've done this before, let's do it again. If the Caribbean was a family, you know, Jamaica would be the one in charge of the music, Bahamas in charge of the guest list. You got Team Mofongo, Team Baguette, Team Amsterdam, you got Team Crumpet, the Bougie crew, the Homeboy crew, and once again, Dominica is quietly reading a book in the corner, and then just when the party starts getting good, the twins arrive. Decked out, these guys came to the party prepared. Welcome to Trinidad and Tobago.
I love that.
It's time to learn geography now!
Everyone, I'm your host, Barbs. Get your GN merch at geographynow.com. It's not selling out if it's your brand. So, Trinidad and Tobago. I actually had the pleasure of meeting some of you guys, the Trini Geography peeps, when I briefly visited a few years back, and some of you guys will be featured in this episode, so woohoo. Well, for what it's worth, we do have a little bit of Trinidad and Tobago with us today. With that, say hi to Mr. Mason. How you doing?
Good afternoon, all ya. What's the scene? My name is Mason, as Barb said. Half Trini, half Jamaican. Hands down the best Caribbean mix in the world. If you
Cool
disagree,
flag shirt.
Yeah.
you go argue with your mother.
Do you have a Trini mom or Trini dad?
My mother is Trini and my dad is Jamaican.
One thing you just gotta say to the world about Trinidad and Tobago before we start. Go.
Can't play mas if you're afraid powder.
What does that mean?
Don't go into something knowing some about to happen and be surprised when it happens.
All right, you know the is coming.
All right?
This episode is gonna be a mess. We've done twin island countries before, you know, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Sao Tome and Principe.
But Trinidad and Tobago are twins from a whole new level.
Let's just go to the map now, shall we?
Trinidad and Tobago is the most southerly of all Caribbean island nations, considered part of the Windward Islands in the Lesser Antilles. They are made up of Trinidad, which makes up about 93% of the landmass and holds about 95% of the population, as well as Tobago, the smaller yet spunky sister island. They are located about 80 miles southeast of Grenada, and at the closest point, only about 7 miles or 11 kilometers to the southern Icacos Peninsula to mainland Venezuela across the Columbus Channel. Also nearly the same distance between Chacachacare Island to the Macuro Peninsula up north across the Bocas del Dragon, or the Mouth of the Dragon Channel. Fun fact, Chacachacare used to be a leper colony. By the way, see this little guy, Patos Island? It used to belong to Trinidad until 1942 when it was ceded to Venezuela. Speaking of which, they have about 35 smaller islands and islets, mostly off the west coast of Trinidad and 4 off of Tobago. In any case, administratively, Trinidad and Tobago is made up of of 9 regions, 3 boroughs, 2 city corporations, and 1 ward, which refers to the entire island of Tobago. Tobago is a ward. The capital city is Port of Spain, which is its own city corporation, and it is the only capital city named after another country that they are not. The country has 2 international airports, one for Trinidad, Picaro International, and one for Tobago, A.N.R. Robinson International. Otherwise, the Port of Spain is the biggest and busiest shipping port and passenger seaport. There are ferry services 2 to 3 times a day between Port of Spain and Scarborough, Tobago. The trip only lasts about 2.5 hours and is super cheap, usually less than $20 US round trip. Roads go to most part of the islands in the north. However, roads stop and are disconnected for about 10.5 miles between Maricel Bay and Matalat Bay. This means if you wish to visit any of the secluded and isolated beaches on the north, you can only do so by a long hike or by boat. Same story in the south. There are virtually no coastal roads, and you will need to go inland or on boat to visit any of the coastal towns.
So interesting side notes, Trinidad and Tobago weren't always one unit prior to 1887 when they merged.
In fact, Tobago is the most diverse colonially switched island in the Caribbean.
Wait, I thought I was fought over the most in the Caribbean.
You were, but mostly just between the British and French. I'm talking about diversity of colonialists. Tobago at some point fell under the Spanish,
Dutch,
French,
British.
and yes, even for a brief period, it was one of the only 2 overseas colonies of the Courlanders in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. That means if they succeeded, Tobago actually could have been speaking either Polish or Lithuanian today. Isn't that weird?
This is why so many Anglicized place names in Trinidad and Tobago leave clues to the former colonial powers that took over. For example, my house in Trinidad, I live near Margarita Drive. You can tell that it has a Spanish influence.
They also have some French-inspired places, like these.
And even in English, they have some funny sounding names like
Scorpion Lane.
there's literally a 21 Jump Street.
Hard Bargain.
Goodwood.
Pepper Village.
Pepper Village.
You know that place? You been there? Yeah. What do they got? Do they got peppers there?
They got some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even a town called Redhead.
Redhead.
Wow, that's destiny. Book my flight. I want to be with my people.
Another thing, shortly after independence, 12 of the islands that were formerly governed by the British decided to form a new country called the West Indies Federation, with the capital, of course, being Port of Spain. They had a really cool flag. They even competed as a nation and won 2 bronze medals in the 1960 Rome Olympics.
Remember that time you almost became my 11th province back in 1961?
That's weird. You guys were almost Canadian. In any case, that's enough backstory. Let's talk about some of the top notable sites that
It's crazy how humans are. You see a relatively small island, Tobago, and everybody and their brother, like, I'm gonna try. Well, they failed 60 years ago, so we're gonna try. I mean, leave the people alone for crying out loud.
Seriously, though. Seriously.
I mean, is it an idea of like, well, it's small enough, we can take them?
I think so.
I mean,
so.
hats off to Tobago, Trinidad Tobago now, to fight all that off, and, we are what we are. Leave us alone.
you can see if you decide to visit Trinidad and Tobago.
Keyword Trinidad and Tobago. There are 2 islands and both have much to offer.
To give us the rundown, here's Trini Geography Adrian to explain.
Hey everyone, I'm Adrian from Trinidad and Tobago, and if you decide to visit our country, we have lots of cool places for you to check out. To get a sense of history across the country, you can visit cool places like the Asa Wright Nature Center, the National Academy for the Performing Arts, the Royal Botanic Gardens, the Red House, which is the seat of Parliament, Fort King George and the Tobago Museum, the National Museum and Art Gallery. Some popular Lime or hangout spots are the Waterfront Port of Spain, Pier 1 Chagaramas, Cross in San Fernando, also known as the Cross, Arapita Avenue, which is the nightlife hub of Port of Spain, Queen's Park Savannah, and Pigeon Point Road, Tobago. Due to our diverse population, we have lots of religious buildings such as Mount St. Benedict Monastery and Holy Trinity Cathedral, the Gina Memorial Mosque, and Hindu temples such as the Temple in the Sea at Waterloo, and the Dattatreya Temple, and Hanuman statue. We also have fun theme parks for little recreation, such as the Five Islands Amusement Park, Scallywag Bay Adventure Park, Harry's Water Park as well. And of course, one of the most iconic...
I keep wanting to say it, but he keeps going, and I'm loving everything he's showing us. But I love his shirt, made in Canada with Trini parts. But I love all those theme parks they have, all those water parks. That's pretty
Park,
cool.
Scallywag Bay Adventure Park, Harry's Water Park as well. And of course, one of the most iconic landmarks of the country, the Magnificent 7 Houses. Make sure to find all 7 of them while in Port of Spain. There you go. Come visit and have some fun with us.
And of course, one thing Trinidad definitely boasts are the copious amounts of beaches, waterfalls, forests, and overall nature zones that get pretty intense. We'll explain more about that in the next section.
So So we've covered every Caribbean nation, and we've come across some interesting physical features.
Then Trinidad and Tobago steps it up and adds a whole new category to the game.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but first, the motion graphic.
First of all, the country is located on the Gulf of Paria to the west, the Caribbean Sea to the north, and the Atlantic Ocean to the east. The country is also at the very convergence of the South American and Caribbean tectonic plates, which in return puts them in the middle of various fault lines. The northern part of Trinidad literally straddles the El Pilar Fault, a transformed fault line that essentially forms the northern range, the tallest mountain range of the country. Here you can also find the tallest peak, Cerro del Aripo. This is also the source of the Caroni River, the largest and longest in the country, which also feeds into the Caroni Arena Reservoir, the largest inland body of water. Most of the rest of Trinidad is flat, with only two smaller hilly regions known as the Central and Southern Range, caused by the Dunmore Hill Thrust Fault and the Los Bajos Fault Line. The country has two main wetlands that many rivers drain into, the Caroni Swamp just under Port of Spain, and the Nariva Swamp on the east side. Otherwise, much of Tobago in the north is hilly with its own range, known as the Tobago Main Ridge, and the highest peak there being Mount Dillon. Just on the west side of Tobago, close to the airport, you also find the famous diving spot Bucco Reef, which has the coral gardens and the nylon pool, a natural pool only 1 meter deep that many people visit. Otherwise, the country experiences a maritime tropical climate with a dry season that lasts 5 months of the year, followed by 7 wet. Finally, due to their location so far south in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago generally lies outside the hurricane belt. Nonetheless, occasionally they may experience an earthquake every so often, the strongest one ever recorded in 1997, hitting 6.7 on the Richter scale.
So here's the thing. Because Trinidad is literally on the exact fault line between the tectonic plates, the country in return has some unique qualities.
For one, geothermal. Although we are nowhere near the level of other Caribbean islands, we have about 20 known mud volcanoes, mostly in the south part of the country, the most notable in the town of Paparo.
Second, Trinidad has the world's largest deposit of natural asphalt. This place, known as Pitch Lake, stands at over 40 hectares in area and 75 meters deep, holding about 10 million tons of asphalt.
Do they like use that asphalt for the roads or anything, or like?
They should use it more so than they have been. At least the roads I've been on in Trinidad.
And that's the thing. Trinidad is unique in that economically they are primarily industrial, putting a huge emphasis on the petroleum and petrochemical sector. To explain more on that, here's Noah.
All right, let's get to it, shall we? Insert VFX intro here. So, the Caribbean. These countries are always fun. Going back to the Pitch Lake we just discussed, the reason it is there is because much of the southern part of Trinidad lies on a heavy oil reservoir zone, both on land and in the sea. In addition, they have heavy and rich natural gas deposits within their EEZ boundaries offshore. The largest one found in the NCMA, or North Coast Marine Area, and in the Columbus Shelf on the east side. The state-owned company, Petrotrin, operates over half of the country's development and manufacturing alone. This makes them the largest producer of natural gas in the CARICOM and the second largest oil producer after Guyana. These alone account for about 40% of their GDP and 80% of exports. So, as you can see, despite the tropical Caribbean getaway exterior, there's a huge energy sector emphasis that actually drives much of the nation. It's like a supermodel that works on an oil rig. All this industrial activity has played a role in making them the 5th richest country in the Americas and classified as a high-income economy. The best part, these resources have actually put them in a trade surplus, and thankfully the government had actually used said funds to build their infrastructure quite well. The main international airport got a huge expansion in 2001. Roads were paved and more desalination plants were constructed to help rural citizens get clean water.
Properly allocating surplus funds to improve civil structure? That's like so hot.
This has in return given Trinidad and Tobago one of the highest growth rates in per capita incomes in the Americas, and is often seen as the finance hub of the Caribbean. Finance hub, not tax haven.
Sorry, I thought I misheard you on that. Carry on.
In any case, in Trinidad, the natural sights do not stop at a tar-filled lake. You can find bioluminescent beaches, a bamboo cathedral, amazing caves, and waterfalls. And it all harbors life. And speaking of life, there's a lot of wildlife going on. And to discuss that, here's Gary Harlow.
Right, check out this wild turtle that I just found. If you shake it, you can hear it. So, Trinidad and Tobago are actually quite unique compared to the other Caribbean islands, due to the fact that long ago, it was actually connected to South America. About 100 species of mammals, 90 species of reptiles, and 30 species of amphibians can be found in the country. The country has 2 national birds, one representing Trinidad, the scarlet ibis, and one representing the Tobago, the rufous-tailed chuckalacca. And in fact, birds are the most prevalent prevalent species found here, as over 480 species either live permanently or migrate here, including 18 kinds of hummingbird. Trinidad was even called the Iere, meaning land of the hummingbird, by the native Arawak people. The country has 61 protected areas, including the Tobago Main Ridge Forest Reserve, established in 1776. And finally, off the coast there are loads of coral reefs, but did you know, no, you probably didn't, that Tobago has the largest known brain coral in the world. This massive guy sits at 10 feet or 3 meters high and 16 feet, 5.3 meters across. Ad lib exit. Well, see you later.
Do you think that's his actual accent?
No. What in the world is brain?
That's what I was gonna ask. You ever heard of that before?
No.
It makes me think of like a villain from a comic book movie. Like, here is where the brain is at. The coral's gonna take over. Oh wow! Please let us know what that is.
Ad lib exit. Well, see you later.
Thank you, Gary. Well, I'm going to transition out of here, and usually I would do the food segment, and I will again one day. But Trinidad Geography Jason will be informing you today on all the wonderful food that Trinidad and Tobago have to offer. I'll just let him have it for this one time.
Thank you, Noah.
Speaking of animals in Trinidad, one thing they do have is snakes. I did have to turn a snake to sushi with a cutlass.
You just like...
Yes.
Well, as you can see, Trinidad and Tobago has quite a bit going on. It's lush yet industrious.
So many flavors in Trinidad and Tobago, much like the intense cuisine we boast.
To talk more on that, here's Trini Geography Jason to explain.
Hello Geography peeps, my name is Jason, and I'm here to talk about the food of Trinidad and Tobago. The food of Trinidad and Tobago, just like many other countries in America, is based on the cultures of the people that settle these lands. From our Afro settlers, we get things like kuku, callaloo, stewed meats, which are very interesting because the stewed meats are made using brown sugar, which we burn or caramelize to give that deep, rich color and flavor. From our Indo settlers, we get things like dal, curries, flatbreads, which we call roti, and even our most popular street food, doubles. Then there's some unique dishes like our bacon shack, declared one of the best sandwiches by Paul Zimmerman on his visit to Trinidad and Tobago, and pilau, similar to a jambalaya made with rice, stewed meat, and vegetables. We love big, bright, bold flavors. We hate bland food. We must have our hot sauce. In fact, one of the hottest peppers in the world, the Moruga scorpion pepper, comes from Trinidad. So if you've never tried Trinidad and Tobago food, I hope you do, because you're gonna love it.
One of the biggest draws, especially on the beaches of Trinidad, is bacon shark. My personal favorite, Uncle Sam's, Richard's bacon shark, Natalie's, there's a few, you know, you can't go wrong really. It's basically a flour baked tortilla with, you know, lettuce, tomato, shark, pepper sauce, you know, don't put too much now. If not shark, you can also put different types of fish, kingfish, other fish inside the bacon.
I've had it before, so it's not too bad.
Always have to be shark.
I never asked you that.
Not like that.
Oh, by the way, if you want to piss off a group of Caribbean people, all you got to do is ask them.
Trinidad has the best KFC in the islands. Trinidad, hands down, for sure. Yeah, no, it ain't nothing.
Well, another thing that adds 11 secret spices and herbs to the country are the people. Let's discuss them in the next segment. All right, so first thing, titles. You could also say Trinidadian, but what is the most commonly used one?
Trinis.
Trinis, there you go. Very quickly, what do you want to say about Trini people, Mason?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that Trini men does real horn. That is 5-10% tops. We cannot take the blame.
Very quickly, how would you explain the difference between Trinidad and Tobago?
You see more, you know, African descent people. It's very small. You go the whole island in a day. My favorite place is Store Bay. Love to swim there.
Tobago's like the chill, like relaxed place.
That's beautiful. Could you imagine living somewhere you could like travel across the whole place in a day? Like, that's just crazy.
Las Vegas? Could you go around?
No, but I mean like.
No, I know what you're saying.
Like that's like your entire. You can't go farther because there's ocean.
Yeah.
You'd feel like a little bit like stuck.
My favorite place is Store Bay. Love to swim there.
Tobago's like the chill, like relaxed place. Trinidad's like the industry place.
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, Trinidad and Tobago is disputably the most diverse island in the Caribbean.
There is a long story that comes with this place, but first, let's do the demographics graph. Let we go.
The country of Trinidad and Tobago has about 1.4 million people and has the highest percentage of Indo-Caribbean people per population out of all the Caribbean islands. The Indo-Trinidadians descend from ancestors brought over from India in the 1800s, and and they make up about 35% of the population. From there, about 34% are black or Afro-Trinidadians. About 15% of the country claims to be mixed in whatever degree. Going off of that, about 8% are Dougla, a word that means mixed between African and Indian, and the remaining 8% of the country are other groups, mostly Asian and European in descent.
We use the Trinidad and Tobago dollar as the currency. We currently use types A and B plug outlets and drive on the left side of the road. If you use driving in Trinidad and Tobago, make sure your predictability skills are on point. Because people don't use indicators for okay? If you gotta get around, you get in a maxi, you get in a taxi. They'll know you're foreign, but try to be hospitable, try to be nice, you know, so they don't overcharge you, that's all. Have manners, that's the biggest key.
The moment you open your mouth, they can tell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even with me.
Even with you. Now, back to the people. As you can see by the graph that we just showed you, Trinidad has quite a diverse population.
For one, it all started with the indigenous Arawak and Carib peoples that inhabited the islands first, speculated to have dated back to 5000 BC.
From there, after Christopher Columbus stopped by in 1498, European involvement started, and like most everywhere else in the Americas, separate waves of outside migration came in.
Even though it was originally colonized by the Spanish, more French people settled in Trinidad, which played a role in creating their patois. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, you guys got a patois. The Atlantic slave trade brought in the Africans, and then later slavery was abolished, and then indentured servants were brought in from India. Later on, people like the Chinese and Arabs were brought in. So that's basically how they became what they are today.
With all of this in mind, you'll have different groups of Trini people all over the country. And here are some of my fellow Trinis who grew up in Trinidad to give you a little bit of what it's like.
One unique thing about growing up as a white Trini is that depending on what part of Trinidad you're in, they might not even realize that you're a Trini. When I was young, me and my family would go on like trips to the east for the weekend, for example, right? And people would come up to us and ask, oh, what country are you all visiting from? Because they thought that we were tourists. When they hear us speak and be like, hey, we're from the west, they'd be like, oh, like some of them didn't even know that they had white Trinis, which is pretty interesting but makes perfect sense because, you know, white people only make up about 1% of the population anyways. So yeah, that was just sort of a unique experience growing up.
I think what all Trinis can agree on would be our ability to make anything and everything an absolute joke, no matter how dire the circumstances. So let's say the country's under some kind of curfew situation, curfew parties. If there's a terrorism or bomb threat, blow out sales in the mall. I think Trinidadians have like an unrivaled sense of humor, and we're very proud of it.
Thank you, guys. All right, let's talk about language. So in Trinidad and Tobago, there is, of course, a Trini dialect and a patois. They are two separate things. What's a Trini dialect like?
The dialect is just short and sweet. Trini people talk fast. They want to get to the point.
What are some things only Trini people say?
They don't say dumb. They'll say you're dotish. You're dotish or what? Like, are you stupid or what? I mean, they do say party, but we just say fete.
Oh, fete, that's like French inspired.
Exactly, yeah. Juve, fete, that's French inspired. Trinis don't say kickback or hang. They just lime. We look into lime, we're not looking to hang.
Otherwise, there's the patois, which is actually French-based and related to Haitian Creole, or the patois spoken in places like Martinique and St. Lucia. And over time, the patois has been kind of dying out. It's kind of sad. But there is a revival attempt to bring it back, and here's one of you guys, the Geography, to explain.
Bel bonjour tout moun. Non moi c'est Jake, et puis moi sorti la Trinité et puis Tobago. Now, the language that I was just speaking is our Trini patois. It's a French lexicon Creole. In 1783, Trinidad became heavily settled by French Creole and French speakers from the French West Indies. This language was the lingua franca of Trinidad up until the early 20th century. Sadly, this is an endangered language now. That's because the British Attorney General, Charles William Warner, he implemented an Anglicization policy to get rid of the French and French Creole influence on Trinidad. However, you can still hear our patois being spoken in rural communities such as Talparo, Blanchisseuse, Maruga, and Paramin, of course. Some things that you can learn to say in patois: how are you, which is Kumanouye, what's up, Sakafet, all is good, tout bagay bien, and ayo, which means goodbye. Every Trini uses patois nearly every day without realizing it. Moi crois que patois que vive toujours. I believe patois will live on forever.
Thank you. Now, religion.
So faith-wise, the country is about 2/3 Christian and about 20% Hindu, 6% Muslim, and even there's a small community of Orisha adherents.
Orisha being a native religion of the Yoruba people in West Africa.
You definitely see the presence of religion for sure. Otherwise, despite the diversity, there are some things that are generally distinctly Trinbagonian.
What do you want to add to the list of things that are distinctly Trinbagonian?
I would say people that's be in your business. People are nosy. I drink water and mind my business. But most Trinis are a little nosy, especially neighbors. You know, they want to know when you come, when you're going, you know, all that. 2 words, it almost means confusion and drama. Kamis and bacchanal. You hear those words used to describe men and women who like to gossip, who like drama. Like ting, you feel me? Like, come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. Stop playing. In Trinidad, they call lighter skinned people either red or yellow. For example, I'm light brown. I would be a red, yellow tone.
You'd be considered red.
Yeah, exactly. Ain't nothing wrong with that. That's just how they do it.
Now, we can't sugarcoat everything. Yes, Trinidad and Tobago does have some controversies. For one, they have been at the crossroads of the drug cartel activity coming in from multiple communities.
It's hard to get exact numbers, but some sources indicate that somewhere about 20% of Trinidad's informal economy is tied to cartel activity.
This spills over into the fact that some areas of Trinidad and Tobago have high crime rates. The locals will know all the details, so just let them guide you.
Trinidad was also a destination spot for quite a few Venezuelans during the 2019 refugee crisis, which put a whole new situation on our small nation.
We're not going to get too much into these topics. You are free to discuss them in the comments, but we gotta move on.
And what better way to move on than to discuss sports? Here's Art with the sports part. Let we go.
Trinidad and Tobago, let's go! Sports here is nothing short of a massively popular pastime that the people take huge pride in. One unique thing that they do here, goat racing. Have you ever rode a goat? Don't milk it though. Goat milk is delicious though. Originating in Buco, Tobago, the sport involves jockeys that run alongside their goats on a 100-yard field. So both the racer and the goat have to be in good shape. You better be sending your goat to the gym or you're not gonna win this race. No slacking. Otherwise, TNT has produced some notable boxing champions, like these guys. They've made a few waves at the Olympics, racking up 3 gold medals, all in athletics. Anyway, soccer or football is a major pastime as well. Nothing made them happier than when their national team, the Soca Warriors, qualified for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. This made them the second smallest country population-wise to qualify after Iceland. In the end though, their favorite sport that they seem to excel the best would have to be cricket, obviously brought in by the British. This dude, Brian Lara, is considered one of the best cricket players of all time. He alone has racked up quite a few world records in the sport, and he doesn't eat crickets, he just plays it. You'll see cricket pitches all over the country, including the Queen's Park Oval in Port of Spain. Their most famous pitch, second largest in the Caribbean, able to seat 20,000 people. They love this sport. Well, that's it for me and Tarchin. We have to get back up to space.
Thanks, Art. Well, whether it's sports or dancing, somehow Trinis are always moving.
The most active event or the best event in Trinidad would definitely be Carnival, Trinidad Carnival. Everything's blocked off, people in the streets. You're really experiencing something that very few places in the world can organize. The costumes, the rhinestones, hand glued, hand stitched, everything is very done up. It's 100% worth it, and it's a great time for sure. I'd recommend it to anybody that enjoys.
To expound a little bit more on the cultural highlights of Trinidad and Tobago, here's Random Hannah to explain.
Hi guys, I'm back. And remember, you guys can get a Random Hannah shirt at geographynow.com. Anyway, just like we discussed with the food, you will find an incredibly diverse mix within the culture of Trinidad and Tobago. Somewhere, somehow, you will find hints of indigenous Indian, African, French, English, Spanish, and even Chinese undertones within daily life. Their arts and literature have developed quite a few notable individuals, including V.S. Naipaul, who won not only the Trinity Cross, but also was knighted by the Queen of England in 1990 and won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. Visual arts have also made their names known worldwide, the first and most notable one being Michel Jean Casabon. After his death, the Trinidad and Tobago Art Society was formed, which helped countless talented individuals thrive and share their work. One art form Trinis take super seriously, of course, is everything that happens in Carnival. Carnival to Trinis is not just a celebration, but a very complex and meticulously organized art form. It's been said that once Carnival is over, the next day people are already planning the next one next year. Trinidad's Carnival is the largest in the Caribbean and disputably the third or fourth largest in the world, which is impressive considering their size. Trini Carnival includes the typical feathered costumes and stilt performers, but they also add distinct elements invented in Trinidad and Tobago, such as a limbo stick, sometimes even lit on fire. Holy and steel pan drums, usually playing calypso and soca. Trinis are super proud of the steel pan drum. I've just found out some really good news, everyone. Keith may not do the music segment. Let's find out.
Yeah, guys, Keith is busy. As you know, he moved to Florida, he has a job, he has a life. So we're gonna have Geography's Darlene and Brandon from Trinidad and Tobago fill in. Take it away, guys.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Darlene.
And we're here to tell you all about the different types of music in TNT.
Before we can dive into our various types of music, we must begin with calypso.
Calypso music was invented in 19th century Trinidad and can trace its roots back to West African Kaiso.
It was originally called the poor man's newspapers, as it was the main means of spreading current events across the islands at a time where literacy was not widespread. Chutney music. Chutney music is an Indo-Indigenous genre invented in Trinidad and is popular throughout Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname. Chutney music is a mixture of Bhojpuri music with influences from traditional calypso and Bollywood filmy songs.
Soca music was invented in the 1970s by Garfield Blackman, also known as Rashoti. His idea behind the genre was to fuse the African song and the East Indian song together to create a fusion song unique to Trinidad and Tobago. Soca is groovier than calypso and a bit up-tempo, and it is widely played throughout the Caribbean.
Parang, parang.
I like it. Parang music.
I like calypso too.
TNT by Venezuelan migrants, and is traditionally sung during the Christmas period.
Traditional parang music is sung in Spanish and accompanied by an array of instruments such as
Cuatro,
steel pan,
box bass,
shak-shak,
just to name a few.
Some famous singers of Trinidad and Tobago are
The Lord Kitchener,
Calypso Rose,
The Mighty Sparrow,
Destra Garcia,
Marshall Montano,
Faye and Lyons Alvarez,
Bungie Garden,
Nicki Minaj,
and Billy Ocean, just to name a few. Steel pan.
The steel pan is the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago. It is the only tuned percussion instrument created in the 20th century, birthed in Trinidad and Tobago, and it represents our culture and our people.
Thank you, Brandon and Darlene.
Well, all right, since we've covered so much with Trinidad and Tobago, from the pitch lake to the pitch of the soca music.
Only one thing left. We gotta check out the pitch of their diplomacy abroad.
Friend zone coming up.
Yeah.
Friend zone? There we go.
Well, there we go. So when you have a country made up of many, many parts of the world put into one, you're gonna have a lot of international interaction.
Trinidad does know who they lime with.
For one, they have a deep-rooted historical relationship with India, as 225 Indian indentured laborers were brought over to the islands in 1845, and now, nearly 200 years later, they make up about a third of the entire population. Indian citizens are allowed to enter visa-free, and India has made numerous investment agreements with the nation. The US and Canada have the largest Trini diaspora community outside the country, and have had close ties even before independence. Trinidad and Tobago are part of the Caribbean Basin Initiative that the US fosters and seeks to build business and commercial services between them, and Canada is not only a major trade partner, but, as we mentioned before, has always kept an eye on them ever since they had those halted talks about joining Canada as a possible province alongside with the rest of the Indies Federation. Having been a former British colony, obviously the UK is still in their periphery of diplomacy. Many Trinis go to the UK to study abroad and have family there, and also, of course, being within the Commonwealth of Nations. When it comes to their best friends, however, of course, you have to look at CARICOM. The Caribbean community is already pretty tight as they are, but they do have their cliques. Guyana is a close one. Back in the 90s, they forgave hundreds of millions of US dollars worth of debt that Guyana owed to them under the Paris Club Agreement, and thousands of Guyanese migrated to Trinidad and Tobago to find work. When it comes to their best friends, however, 4 out of 5 times, Trinis will tell me it's a little complicated, but most likely the number one homie is Jamaica. As the 2 largest Anglophone nations in the Caribbean, Caribbean, sharing a mutual British-based history and having some of the most powerful influences over the Caribbean. Trinis and Jamaicans have the biggest loving yet kind of rivalry, but like good rivalry relationship. Each one thinks their music is better, their food is better, their parties are crazier. It never ends, but when they actually meet each other in person, like face to face, it's like an instant connection. Wedding 2 months later, Trina making babies shortly after.
In conclusion, Mason, you take it away. You're the Trini guy. I'm going to step off my stool. So now you're just going to speak from the heart, man.
In conclusion, be it the music, festivals, the food, the people, the land. Trinidad is so unique, and every country is unique in its own way, but definitely a place to visit, definitely a place to go. You might get a culture shock depending on where you're from, but if you go with manners, you will be welcomed and you'll have a great time. And Trinidad KFC is the best KFC in the Caribbean.
All right, Mason man, thank you so much for coming to this
problem.
episode. Stay tuned. Tunisia is coming up next.
Big Montaigne.
Oh.
Oh man, how cute and fun!
Is he
hilarious.
really that much taller than him?
Right? Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I just wish we saw more pictures of the beaches because I feel like if we were to go there, like that's what you would hang out with. But that's incredible, all the different types of birds there that are there. I'm curious too, just like animals. Like, do they have sloths? Like, what other animals are there besides snakes?
They were a little slow to show us the sloths. Still waiting. That was a longer video, but not long as in bad. But I had to give a little stretch there a few seconds ago because, that was very, very informative. But whenever I watch this with you, I always think, okay, there's another place we gotta go visit. I think I'd probably want to stay more on the Tobago side, just because they're both islands, right?
But
so they both have
it's
the
more
beaches.
chill,
It's
laid
more
back.
relaxed, and that's kind of more my style. Like just kind of like, it's funny because when I was a kid, we go on vacation with my parents, and they just wanted to relax and they wanted to rest because the troubles of the world, and us kids, we want to move, go. And now it's funny how I transitioned to that, and I just kind of like, oh, can't we just like hang out here? And I do get kind of an itch to like go do something, but like we go do something for an hour that day, and I'm good the rest of the day. So I think Tobago might be the place, but I definitely want to go check out Trinidad. I obviously don't look at maps too often. I say that every single time. I had no idea it was so far south in the Caribbean, so close to Venezuela.
So close to Venezuela. I didn't realize that.
Me neither. And just recently with the World Baseball Classic that just happened, and you had all these countries like Venezuela participating, it kind of broadened my horizons, but also it broadened my interest. So this was kind of cool to learn about a country that's so close to Venezuela and is kind of in that realm. I'm Padres fan, as you can see right here, and we have a player, Xander Bogaerts from Aruba. So all of that's really, really cool to learn more about, especially this side of our part of the world, North America, South America, Central America, Caribbean, all that kind of stuff. But this was a lot of fun to listen to and a lot of great stuff to inform ourselves on. It must have been super hot in that vintage studio because my man was like wiping his brow several times, and they were both kind of like glistening. Kind of made it look like they just finished working out or something, but
it could be to the
had to be hot in there. I'm telling you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time.
Oh, how do you say goodbye? Ayo or something like that?
Ayo.
Ayo.